Hi, I'm Lisa Bagshaw, and welcome to Bold Leaps, the show that interviews creative, inspiring, successful people about the risks they've taken to pursue their dreams. And today's guest is internationally acclaimed, award-winning Canadian sculptor David Robinson. David grew up in a very religious family with a charismatic preacher father without much exposure to art. But David always believed he was born with inherent gifts, and his art was his calling. As a child, he was always building structures, and his parents supported his path. He went on to pursue extensive and acclaimed studies in fine arts across Canada. Emerging from the Petrie dish of his childhood, as he calls it, David's internationally renowned art is created from a bronze, steel, silver, concrete, paper, and mirrors. It takes the form of massive, meaningful monuments, which are filled with seemingly tortured figures, fraught with risks, tension, struggle, and conflict, which mimic the human condition, and perhaps his childhood. But as highly acclaimed and award-winning as David's career has been, it has not been a straight line. Welcome to Bold Leaps, David.
Thank you, Lisa. Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much for having us into your incredible studio here. We are surrounded by all your magnificent structures.
And by a freight train going by.
And by a train, yeah, very authentic. I really wanted to interview you for this show because it seems like everything about your life as an artist is about risk-taking. Whether it's going for the commissions, pitching different jobs, you're running a business, the actual creations themselves are just fraught with risk, these highly suspended figures. So I'm really excited about this interview. So let's get started with your childhood. So you were not brought up in an artistic environment. Where do you think your love of art came from?
The love of art, I mean, it actually starts, I think, with, before I knew anything about art or the art world, it was really a love of making. And so that was, weekly sessions, after school sessions in a ceramic studio in Toronto where I grew up became the sort of central crossroads of my life. Everything else was tolerated to be there and doing that and working with my hands. We did ceramics and film study at this lovely sort of an after school program for kids. And so I was very, very young when I started into, I was younger still than that. The story I tell is that of digging up my mother's flower beds in order to get clay. Dulling her bread knives by carving cardboard in the basement. So always obsessively making. Yeah.
And where do you think that came from?
I don't know. I've had, older relatives posit various theories over the years. If there's some DNA, apparently there was, way back in the family line, there was shipbuilders somewhere in there. But, you mentioned the religious upbringing, and I think the richness, the rich language and oratory and imagination steeped in metaphor, which is, the sort of the semi-mythic landscape of that kind of an ethos growing up. I think that's a massive influence as well.
To me, that seems like a large leap to have that sort of mythology, be surrounded by that sort of mythology, to actually making and being, did you say, obsessed with making?
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose that it infuses, the other motif that I reach for, if I think about what is formative in my the sort of imagination and growing up as an artsy type, was my grandmother's farm, where we would run wild for 2 months every summer. And that's with 30 odd first cousins there. And so it was an absolutely wide open, free for all kind of place of play and imagination and story and drama, theater. You know, we created this sort of tribal microculture as a great big cohort of cousins. And so I think there's a confluence of all of these things that, my first studio was probably my grandmother's drive shed, and working with a great cast iron vise that was there and building things building things there. But it was, materials and space and partners with which to play and create and imagine. All of those things were I had all of that in spades.
How did you feel when you were working with clay?
It was recently told to me that you can consider a thing to be your vocation if it has an effect on time. And so it was a realm and a practice into which I could disappear, and the dilations of time would just sort of disappear. It still is this very desired sort of state of waking dream. It's contemplative, it's meditative, and it's one of the go-to phrases that I turn to is the notion that my work has better ideas than I do. So the things that are discovered there, whatever your intentions you set out for, paying attention to a process like that can be enlightening beyond anything that you can sort of imagine in advance.
I think that's a really important part of figuring out whether it's your calling or your passion or your dream is. What I'm hearing you say is that when you do it, you lose yourself. You lose a sense of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
you still feel that way?
I still do, yeah. It takes more and more discipline, because I'm also sort of I'm a self-employed small business person, and all that entails. And so the ability to be disciplined enough to carve away that time and actually switch off all of the stuff that is pressing and cluttering. I mean, I literally sometimes, if we're meeting and strategizing what the studio is up to, I have to very often really not be in the studio, because it's a place because the kind of creative diversions, the pieces, the artifacts, the works in progress that are around and about call to me and manifest, and they speak up and they chatter, and it's hard for me to sort of split the mind into those two disparate necessities.
That's an incredible juxtaposition between the art calling to you and answering that call, and then running the business.
Yeah.
We have to take a break, but we are going to come back and talk more about that and your big break. I want to talk about that too. So please stay with us, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Bold Leaps. I'm here with David Robinson, and we're having a fabulous conversation about the risks you've taken to pursue your dreams. And one of your big breaks, well, what was one of your big breaks in your career?
Well, yeah, the one that came to mind was, it was a twofold thing. I was working in construction at 20-something, and working evenings and weekends to produce my first solo show of work, which had been graciously an opportunity extended to me by a dear friend called Dal Schindel, and there's a gallery at Regent College now named after him. They gave me my first show, and that went very well, and then it was seen by the local legendary fine art dealer Diane Ferris.
Wonderful.
And Diane sort of called me up, and I was completely shocked. That was such a prestigious gallery in my mind, and in reality at the time, that I had never even darkened the door. I'd never been in. I was too intimidated to walk into that space, much as my aspirations lay there. But anyway, Diane called me and signed me to that stable of artists, and all of a sudden I was in the company of these amazing, internationally renowned art stars, Richard Lukács and Angela Grossman and the like, that whole crowd. And I was very much a generation or below all of them, but it was a very august company to find myself in, and the intimidation. My sense of intimidation carried on for some time being there, but it was a great, a great event, a great chapter, a new chapter.
Beyond intimidation, how did you feel about it? Like, if say you walked into the gallery and saw your work, how did you feel?
Human beings are complicated, right? I was also young and narcissistic enough to think, well, this is where my work belongs. To think this is quite right and how things should be. So I had that was a part of it, and then, but the other side of that paradox would be, conflicted by, maybe, we've talked a little bit about imposter syndrome, and that can be an ongoing challenge for, up by the bootstraps, self-employed, self-declared, artistic personage of some sort, I suppose. I mean, if you hold yourself as having, if you have the audacity to imagine that you've got something to say and that it needs to be articulated and expressed and put out in front of the world and given a venue like that, then I suppose that's a useful fuel source to burn as well. And that can be one phase of what is now a 30-plus year career.
How did you handle that imposter syndrome? Because I think a lot of people suffer from that. Yeah,
I mean, ritual self-flagellation, as it were. I used to, my dear wife, Catherine, would have to, listen to me come home after doing a presentation or something like that and just tear myself to absolute pieces. So maybe you just sort of outgrow that over time and you make peace with it. And as I said, I think, so maybe the reasons for, even if it's, hubris and narcissism when you're young that are, as I said, a useful fuel supply to burn and keep your whole ship moving forward. Maybe as you get a little older and you realize, well, maybe there are some authentic things here and you can calm down a bit and go through an ego death or two. And find, truer and better and hopefully more refined reasons to pursue what you're doing and try and find your way back to the center, back to the core. And for me, it's always been in the, as I said, that aspect of seeing there in the contemplative and intuitive processes of the work manifesting more than, whatever brilliant idea I think I have, the work can sometimes lead me to places that are better still. And so that's, I suppose, to reach for a different mode of language, that's that's almost like a kind of a higher power experience when that recurs and recurs in the work. And so looking to that and trusting to that is, you framed a lot of what I've been doing here as being the grappling with risk. And I suppose it's that perennial return to a posture of taking risks, which is really, any teacher, practitioner of art will tell you or writing, that's the thing that you have to return to. You have to be willing at any moment to tear it all down. And so knowing that risk is the matrix and backdrop of your practice is critically important, both for the sort of health and well-being of the particular creation that you're working on, but also as a mental disposition, I think.
It seems to require great fortitude from my position here. You've been very open and vulnerable about the fact that your career as an artist has not been a straight line, which I think is really a very important message. What are some of the obstacles that you've encountered?
There are obstacles, of practical necessity. There's the setting yourself up with this great tortoise shell of a space, which is a reality of small business overhead to be managed. There have been seasons where the many good people that come alongside of the studio practice and help me do what I do, all of a sudden, with that reality, I found myself being kind of a manager of people and staff and and all of the psychosocial complexities of that. And of course, you make terrible blunders doing that for the first time or times, and hopefully you get better at that. The obstacles of the art world itself, which is this big, multi-headed, formidable beast, which actually does not particularly love somebody going about the practice the way that I've done, which is, in a kind of a semi-self-representing mode. I have my own gallery and that kind of thing. So breaking those kind of rules, breaking those orthodoxies of the practice, yeah, we could go on.
There's a lot of obstacles.
Yeah, nothing but.
And you just manage that?
Well, as I said, I think maybe whatever, if it started as hubris, it may have turned to this, in this chapter, it's sheer bloody-mindedness to carry on, to keep going. Necessity.
Yeah.
Too late for a career change now.
You're committed.
I guess I'm a lifer, yeah. Yeah.
Well, we have to take another break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask David what life is like now and what advice he has for those of us who are too afraid to pursue our dreams. When we come back. Welcome back to Bold Leaps. I'm here with David Robinson, the magnificent sculptor extraordinaire. One of the pieces that I would like to just talk about before we have to end and ask your advice is Windward Calm. That is one of the most incredible pieces, I think, that exists in Vancouver. Can you tell me how that came to be?
Yeah, the short version is that I was recovering from open heart surgery, and as such, I was daily or weekly, I guess, on the 6th floor of the Gordon and Leslie Diamond Healthcare Center at Vancouver General Hospital, and it fronts onto a great 7-story atrium, which is a very vertiginous experience to step out and look down into that great glass void. In that chapter, when I was trying to, they literally take you to death's door in a procedure like that, and so you're coming back to life, and I was doing that and trying to get better and healthy again, and this great empty space just started speaking to me. So once I was back in the studio, we put together, I had designed this little maquette, imagining it in this space, this sort of sailing figure, this figure in a sailing vessel. And we did a little sort of green screen presentational video, showed it to first Gordon Diamond, but he and Leslie kind of caught the vision of this piece immediately. He understood it, he just got it, that this was a thing that we needed to do. And so they got behind the project, and we spent the next 2 years or so realizing that. And to this day, I still get an amazing amount of feedback from people who are there on their own health journey, for whom it speaks. And so it's, I sort of have said that I probably could have just, maybe that's my masterpiece, and I could have quit then, because it's the confluence of doing a piece that finds this utterly perfect situation in the world. I mean, it's sort of as good as it gets in my practice.
Well, I think that is what you do. And I think that piece is just a perfect example of what you do. It creates so much emotion, and in that particular one, it's creating hope for people who may have lost hope. I would like to get to a couple more questions if I can. One is, what is the biggest lesson you have learned in your art career?
Well, with some of the comments I've, framed in our conversation here today, I think that for myself, I'm learning about a position of relative, humility relative to the process, to the practice, to the offering of this work out into the big world. I think that's one thing that I'm thinking about lately, at least. There's a lot that happens in the world of art and design that is presumed to be a thing that issues from some personal genius. Well, another image that I reach for is that I think if you're actually like in some kind of authentic pursuit of whatever your facet of truth is to reveal to the world, that you are the servant of that practice, and to presume that you are the master is I think sometimes wrong-headed, and which is why I said I think in my younger self I was still learning and divesting a lot of that, the aforementioned ego deaths. Those things come to mind anyways. You can ask me again tomorrow, I might answer differently.
That is a very beautiful response. What advice do you have for people who are too afraid to pursue their dreams?
Well, maybe I should hearken back to my great patron Gordon Diamond, chatting with him one day. And he was talking about, setting forth, and there's a man who understands, great risk, and setting out in the world and pursuing what you want to be doing. And he said, relative to, setting forth and taking risks, that he says, well, you're dead for a long time. So,
that is true.
I think, that's a pretty embedded in there as a message of do it now.
Yeah, you're dead for a long time. We're alive.
That's right.
Thank you so much for this really insightful and inspiring conversation. I could easily talk to you for hours more about your thoughts and your philosophies.
Likewise.
And thank you for creating all the incredibly beautiful structures and monuments that you create, and invoking such beautiful emotions in all of us.
Thank you, Lisa. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. That's it for another episode of Bold Leaps. Please subscribe to YouTube and follow us on social media for more inspiring episodes and updates. Tell us your bold leaps in the comments. Special thanks to Fresh Street Market. And remember, every step you take is a step toward your dreams.